Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground Podcast. I am your host, Joe Kuzma. Had to take a little breather after that Miami Dolphins game yesterday. Oh, geez, folks, let me tell you, we joke around a lot about it's a trap game. If there was ever any definition of a trap game, that had to be it. And I said one of the most important things coming out of Miami is hopefully that somebody would come out of this game healthy. Should have emphasized, and part of that being just playing in a change of climate, a change of heat. I've mentioned before that myself, I officiate, albeit a different sport, out there during this weekend, still in Western Pennsylvania, no less. The higher temperatures, I know it definitely made my stomach feel a little queasy. That was on Saturday, going down to South Beach on Sunday and experiencing much greater warmth with the sun beating down on you, wearing black jerseys. That's the reason why Miami, since the Don Shula days, always wore white at home. They felt it was a competitive advantage. It surely showed. A fresher team with the Miami Dolphins, having not played on the road the previous week, they get a nice homestand, and they're going to kickstart their season probably off of that. They had some things they had to fix. They had some things they had to work on going into that game. Obviously, they did that, and the Pittsburgh Steelers did not on Sunday, and it was a disappointing loss, folks. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it anymore. We have a lot of other things that we probably should be talking about today, such as the Ben Roethlisberger injury and how that may affect this team as well, but just heading into this real quick, just trying to take it head on, just looking at what happened to the Steelers here. We said it was going to be an offensive line type deal again. It most certainly was. The Steelers, they were fifth in rushing or on defense, allowing rushing yards heading into this game, and they allowed Jay Ajayi to have probably the greatest day against the Pittsburgh Steelers, or one of the greatest days since the 1970 merger. Only the sixth such player in the history of playing games against the Steelers to have 200-plus yards rushing, and fourth since that merger. That is it's just unacceptable. I mean, I don't know what else you're supposed to look at here. And on the other side of things, of course, granted, the Miami Dolphins offensive line, they got two of their starters back. They were not strong. This is the first time they were playing together, and this is now the sixth game, or week 6. They had not played together, and you would think the Steelers could take a competitive advantage. They cut two guys during the middle of the week. Adam Gase and company, the coaches for the Miami Dolphins, cut two of their offensive linemen in the middle of the week. I think one or both of them were former third-round picks, somewhere in there, so, middle of the draft type guys. But this just goes to show you the woes that they were having with their offensive line. Tannehill sacked 17 times headed into this game over a 5-game span, and a lot of those were in that Titans game a week earlier. You can't tell me the Tennessee Titans go on the road, go down to Miami, and are a better team than the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nobody could put their finger on it. Everybody I'm reading, all of my colleagues, everyone I listen to post-game, podcasts, whatever else, all the analysts, myself included, we cannot figure this out. They have curfews at night. They go that. The only thing I could literally think of is maybe they need to stop traveling on Saturday. Maybe they need to travel on Friday night or something like that. Get in and spend a day on the road. Is it the road? Ben Roethlisberger hasn't been able to explain it either. He has as many, I think, touchdowns to interceptions. It was something like 15-15. I didn't catch the number. It was just too quick. I think it was David Todd that put that out there on the post-game show with Charlie Batch. And he's just phenomenal at home, and he has the home record still, and now we might not have him at home. But the Steelers just, Darius Hayward-Bay was just the only real bright spot. That play exhibited why the Miami Dolphins couldn't stop the run. And instead of the Steelers stopping the run, owning the Miami Dolphins offensive line, and putting Tannehill on his back, they only touched him twice and didn't sack him at all. And on the other side of things, Ben gets sacked twice, comes out of this with an injury, although I do think that was a little freak, unless it was the whole thing with the player like landing on him, just looking for a dirty cheap shot after the game. Somebody's going to say, oh, Joe, rolling your eyes. You know what? Just watch that replay. Why is that player shadowing him and then turns around and spins on his back to fall on a quarterback? I mean, there's really only one reason you do that. You're going shoulder to shoulder. It's not like Ben tripped him up or anything. The play is going in the opposite direction, and he falls backwards on Ben. I'm going to be the one to point that out. I think that's very questionable. You are dealing with professional athletes here, folks. Nothing is an accident. You need to take that into consideration. Nothing is an accident. So the one saving grace out of this, they could have made some real headway here in the whole AFC race, and especially in the AFC North where everyone else loses. That's the only saving grace. And thank God, because the Baltimore Ravens were gifted a pass interference call that put them ahead with about 2 minutes left in that game. And you gotta thank all your lucky stars there that Odell Beckham Jr. took one to the house, or else the Ravens may be in the lead of this division, having played a miserable schedule and winning some games that they shouldn't have won. And we may be looking at that as the target for Ben to come back. I am not the medical expert. There have been at Pro Football Doc is one of the guys from Real Football and also SiriusXM that was all over the Twitterverse last night putting out his estimations. There's a precedent with Phillip Rivers before that. Phillip Rivers even played in that the very next game. And we know Ben Roethlisberger's a tough SOB. We know that Mike Tomlin necessarily might not want him out there and do further damage. All we know for sure at this point is that Landry Jones is going to take all of the first team reps, as he should. He's the backup. He's the one who's been there the longest. A lot of people cringe when you see him get in a game. I feel 50-50 on him, even though I'm one of his biggest defenders. A lot of people saying, why couldn't you do something better at the backup position? Well, they get Zach Mettenberger, but he's 0-10 as a backup, or as a starting quarterback. He's 0-10. Not a good completion rate, but he may fit the bill. He's a bigger, leaner body. But ask yourself why other teams, if he was so good, why other teams didn't want him. And he was inactive. A lot of people were already calling for him when Landry Jones comes into this game. And a lot of people just didn't realize that he's just inactive, okay? Jones has been here the longest. Jones gets to throw one pass, and it was a miserable pass. That's probably what I would have done, too. You're going to pound the rock. You're going to run it with Le'Veon. You're going to run it now with D'Angelo Williams. It's probably going to be the game plan, getting ahead of myself here. I think Bell still had a very decent game here, putting up over 100 scrimmage yards against the Dolphins, but Ben's interceptions. Ben, my colleague Neil Coulong and the guys at Steelers Wire put out an article this morning, and they're talking about how Ben hadn't necessarily been the sharpest. Even though we're talking MVP by statistics alone, there have been instances where Ben hasn't been the best this year. So when you lose the turnover battle there, you can't force turnovers, pressure the quarterback, et cetera, et cetera. They gave up 2 big plays in this game too, very reminiscent of that Philadelphia Eagles game, not only just because it was on the road, because they give up the big plays. This team misses Cam Hayward. Vince Williams comes off the field at one point. I have to say, though, Tyler Matakevich, I just say this from eyeballing it, having seen the game once, not reviewing any film, I thought he did pretty well, having been like the third option now at inside linebacker coming in there. And we needed somebody that was a sure-handed tackler because we were just not getting it done. That Jay Ajayi highlight that we're going to continue seeing, that game was already out of control by that point. And then you have tired players who just aren't making tackles, and that's exactly what it has to be. We joked around, we put one of those memes out and it says, if you could tackle, that would be great, the guy from Office Space. And that's pretty much, that sums up the game. That sums up the big game here. Every big play for the Steelers. Now, Miami had plenty of big plays. They had 21 plays of 10 or more yards apiece. 21 of those plays. They actually outsnapped the Steelers in this game, too, because they hadn't outsnapped anybody all year. They had run 105 less plays than their opponent when it came to the offensive side of the ball. This is just a tale of everything going horribly wrong again. A lot of people blaming Jordan Berry on field position and bad punts, like 38-yard punt, blah, 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 whatever like that. One of them bounced like backwards. You know, you're going to have bizarre things like that. Just anything that could have went the Steelers' way did not yesterday. Everything went against them. Berry shouldn't even be punting, to be completely honest. But you see opportunities where Ben throws the one pick because he overthrows Jesse James, who was wide open, could have moved the chains there. We saw Eli Rogers just returns with the ball to go upfield too quick, didn't quite have it. He's probably off to the races there for a decent chunk of change as well. And just, I mean, there weren't very few bright spots. You had Darius Hayward-Bay. You had Kobe Hamilton, who stepped in pretty nicely. Remember, Sammy Coates, he has the whole finger problem. Everybody, geez, can you get any worse reporting information? 17 stitches, then it's 7 stitches, then it's a fracture, it's an index, it's a thumb. All we know is there's something with his hand. It was reported it was his index finger and maybe in between his index and middle finger that was the problem. He was very limited yesterday. He was not on the field as much as you probably would have liked to have had. Kobe Hamilton's out there in his first start as well because Marcus Wheaton also out of that game. Remember, Marcus Gilbert also not there, so you have Chris Hubbard, and you also have Big Al trying to hold down the fort on the edges. My colleague Brian Roach, who wrote the preview for this game, was right, at least with the Dolphins' defensive line. They controlled the game. They got the pressure on Ben where necessary. And the Steelers, I think they ran the ball okay, but you turn yourself into a very one-dimensional team there. Some of the deep shots just weren't there. Antonio Brown almost disappeared from this game, either by coverage or Ben not being able to get him the ball. And anytime the Steelers had a big play, let's talk about this. There was no rhythm to this game. Every time there was a big play, it was coming back, it was a hold, it was a flag, and it wasn't just that it was a penalty. I'm kind of irritated with the officiating crew. When I saw it was Ed Hockley, I already kind of figured this would be this thing where they call some like real ticky-tack type fouls, and then all of a sudden just let everything go. Like Le'Veon Bell getting drugged down from behind. The guy had his hand inside his shoulder pads. You can't even grab the nameplate this year. It's a new rule, and bring somebody down, let alone the original horse collar, of which this was that type of flavor or variety. How that gets missed is totally beyond me. It seems so obvious. You're watching it on TV. If a TV camera angle can see it and see it in real time, I don't know how an officiating crew can miss something so big like that. But some of these holds and stuff were just, and granted, the Steelers I'm not saying it's just, the Steelers lost because of officiating. No, they lost because they were not the better team and they played poorly. Okay, I'm going to say that. It's straight up, that's what it is. But the officiating did not help, and the officials taking forever to decide what these calls are. You would think that it was their first year in the NFL, and that guy's with like 20 years of experience who've done all these postseason games and been on Super Bowl crews and stuff like that. It was just very bizarre. They seemed kind of out of their element as well, and that just destroys the rhythm for a team, especially after the Dolphins kick off that game. I can't explain why an official that might have his back turned shouldn't have his back turned to begin with. Should be backpedaling in that instance with his eyes still on the field, and so either somebody else blowing the whistle to start the game, or somebody being out of position. That penalized the Steelers starting at midfield for that possession, like the second possession of the game after the Dolphins had scored, and they tried that onside kick and then said, "Oh no, you know what? The officials weren't ready. The officials screwed up, so we're going to make sure it's going to get pinned back. You get to take that over. That's a mulligan. That's absolute crap. That's where you have to swallow your whistle there and just realize, well, even if it didn't go exactly to procedure, we had this play that occurred, and now we are effectively penalizing one team and helping the other team. And that just, it blows my mind, folks. Just the rhythm and the pace of the game was never there. They couldn't get anything started, either because of penalties or just by their own downfall of drops or a sack or a negative play or whatever it be the case. It was just miserable. It was difficult to watch. I know many people were very upset. Guys, take a deep breath, okay? We all want to beat these bad teams, but on any given Sunday, they are still professional football players. They're still trying to get their act together down there in South Beach, too. Somebody's going to look at this and say, well, look what the Bengals did. Well, Miami had to travel to Cincinnati, and they had to go there on a short week as well. And that's just not the same type of instance. I don't like to do the common opponents because that particular piece is not common. Just as though the Cincinnati Bengals playing this week's upcoming opponent, New England, they play them in New England. The Patriots have to come to Pittsburgh. And fans, I hope you conserve all of this frustration that you have. Don't boo Landry Jones. Don't boo whoever's back there, even if Zach Mettenberger ends up getting in for some reason. Jones gets hurt or something, God forbid. Support this team. This team needs your support at Heinz Field on Sunday. They tremendously need everyone's support. It needs to be loud. It needs to be rowdy. It doesn't need to be quiet. They need to get on Brady's back. This team has not thrown an interception all year, and they're going to need your help. They're going to need the crowd. The crowd has to be that extra man on the field. Hopefully we get some of these injured players back, because it was just, there was nothing there. The Cam Hayward not being there, definitely a big loss. I think it also hurt. Definitely Artie Burns was attributed to one of those big plays. He nearly came back and got onto the ball, too. The kid is just so fast. It's going to be some growing pains like that no matter the team. I told everyone before this, Tannehill was still a very accurate quarterback. It's just that he was getting hurried and put on his butt a lot. So you see what happens. This can happen. I don't want to make any much more excuses for this. The real hopeful thing is that Ben Roethlisberger could come out of this supposedly getting a trim on the meniscus, like we had heard anywhere, even a couple weeks. Steelers have a bye after Sunday's game with the Patriots, so if Ben misses one game, he could be back for the Ravens. Our very own medical expert, believe it or not, Terry Fletcher, who has a teaser, she has an alphabet of credentials that follow her name. She says hopeful 2 to 4 weeks, or 3-4 weeks is what she had said, and that was pretty much what I even pulled up from even Wikipedia. And I have no alphabets after my name, but Terry says the most hopeful situation would be that Ravens game. And I do believe Baltimore is not a good football team, and even if we have to roll with without Ben for one extra game, folks, if we could go 1-1 here, I'm okay with that. You go 4-3. You look around at this division, as long as you can handle the Ravens after the bye and get everything together. Hey, if you could beat the Patriots, that's icing on the cake. We talked about that on the roundtable with me, Neil Colong, and Jeff Hartman. That was the game we thought might be trouble, but just look around this division. All is not lost, okay? Silver lining, Ben's season will more than likely not be over, and he will be back sooner rather than later. So conserve that energy. Have it stored up. Going to need it at Heinz Field on Sunday for that second half of the CBS doubleheader that's going to be run. You know, Phil Simms is going to be all over us. But until then, be safe, be good. We get some more Ben news. I'm going to hop back on the air here and give it to you. So I will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.